Awesome. Welcome to Jerri Berry's Friend-Tastic Library, the podcast where I interview everyday average people about their fantastic lives. Instead of going to a regular library, you can come to the Friend-Tastic Library and check out people. Today, this is the very first recording of 2022, even though this won't be out for like a couple weeks. But I'm excited that it's day 1 of 2022 and I'm recording a podcast. Before we get into it, I wanted to let everybody know this is the first episode that I'll talk about my Patreon. I officially set up a Patreon. So if you want to support the Friend-Tastic Library, this is a total hobby for me and I don't do it to make money. But if you find it in your heart that you want to support me so that I can buy like new cameras or microphones or a better backdrop, because this is curtains from the dollar store, then you can join my Patreon. I'll put info about it in the description. I believe there's already info about it in all my episode descriptions on YouTube, but I'll make sure that it's in this one for sure. Anywho, today we're talking to Melisah, or Mel.
Hi,
Melisah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm awesome. Melisah is a surrogate. She's a barista. I guess technically you were a surrogate and may be a surrogate in the future, near future. You're a barista. You're a singer in a super cool cover band.
Yeah. I think you become a barista. I think once you become a surrogate, you kind of just
are a surrogate. Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, yeah. I didn't know how that wording went, but yeah.
Me neither. I'm gonna go with that.
You're not currently an active duty surrogate.
There you go.
Yeah. But you were a surrogate. There's a crack in my backdrop. It's bothering me. But yeah. So anywho, I always start the show with a magical moment we met, and I've known of you longer than I've actually like seen you and met you. Mm-hmm. But do you want to share, because I like to let the guests go first, do you want to share a memory that you have of when we first met, and then I'll share mine, or we'll see if it's the same?
Yeah, I think that from what I can remember, I think the first time we met was at Chris's house when he was living with his mom.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why I came over. I may have come over with food that I don't remember either. But I remember we were like hanging out in the room.
Yeah.
Then I just remember leaving and texting him like, I love her.
Yeah, I have pretty much the same memory. Me and Chris were living with his mom still. And I think it may have, I can't remember if both of you came home like from a gig or if you came over to practice for an upcoming gig. But there was definitely food involved. Like we were eating McDonald's on our bed. Like mine and Chris's bed.
Windmills officially then.
I think you might have been doing gigs with City St. Angels.
Yeah, I think that's what it was when we were just jamming out. Chris and I were known to just like
just hang out and do music. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I thought it was really funny because Chris has so many friends and I know of so many of them for so long before I meet them. And then I know how Chris is and I know some of his friends, so then I build up images in my head of the friends I haven't officially met yet. And this has happened multiple times where I have an image of a person in my head and then I meet them and they're completely different.
Like, well, your image of me.
I don't know. I guess I just assumed that you looked like, I don't really know. I guess I didn't expect you to be so cool and pretty. Because I'm like, oh, Chris is lame, whatever, right? And like I guess a lot of his friends are on the LGBTQIA plus spectrum. So then whenever I meet ones that are just very straight femme, it's shocking to me. I think that's the nicest way I can put it. Like the most politically correct way to say it would be like that. It happened with like his friend Christina too. I just pictured this like awesome lady that looked very more lesbian and plus sized and more like me, because he explained that her personality was close to mine, and then she came over and she was like this tiny, short, thin, petite, pretty woman, and I was like, oh, I didn't know Chris had such attractive friends. Like it's the same with like, he has a friend Seabass and he wants Seabass to be on the podcast, and Seabass is like the Ryan Reynolds of Soledad. He's like just super tall and thin and like attractive, and he left and went to LA. Like, oh my
all fun.
But yeah, most of these people I didn't even meet until like we were at our wedding. So yeah. And I think I met you after our wedding. We were already married when we officially met you. But yeah. And then, like It's stressful too because he has so many friends that are female, and then you have like a weird female friendship dynamic that you have to deal with. But I got lucky a lot of times where like they're cool like you and you just don't care. There's like no weirdness about it.
Yeah.
But there's other like female friendships that I've had to deal with where they don't like me, or that's the whole thing. Girl drama's the worst. But yeah.
It's funny because like when Chris and I are playing shows, especially when I was pregnant, like they automatically assume that like Chris and I are a couple. So like in between where he'll be like, introduce us. So I'm like, hey everybody, I'm Melisah. This is my good friend Chris. I was like, and together we make chasing windmills. Or I know like there was one location that we played and the guy's like, they need tips because she's pregnant. I was like, and it's not his. Like, just clarify, like,
yeah.
Or when you were too, I kind of threw that out there, like he needs money, like his wife's pregnant.
Yeah, it's funny because I always tell him too, I'm like, just let them believe that you guys are like poor starving artists in a relationship, but if it'll get you more money, just let them believe that. Tell them that. Like that one guy, he was saying that one guy was joking about you guys living out of a van or something like that. You were pregnant and you guys needed money.
About that, he'll be like, their van's parked around the corner.
Yeah. I'm like, just let them believe it, it's fine, get the tips, babe, it's cool. But yeah, so anywho, you're in Chasing Windmills. How did that all start?
Well, I met Chris when I was working at the Windmill, a restaurant, which is kind of where we got our name from. And he would come in every Monday and order the nasty split pea with ham soup. It was so gross. He'd get that and a Blue Moon beer.
That's so funny.
He thought Blue Moon beer was good. And so I've known him for quite a long time. And then we'd always just like jam out, like just get together. He'd play his guitar and we would do cover songs. And then I think it was when Jared's preschool was doing that like fundraiser.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. You played with the band though. It was like the guys.
Yeah, and that's how it started. I came in to sing with the band, and then after that he was like, hey, we should like get together and do our own like duo thing and play coffee shops and stuff. And I was like, all right, cool. And I happened to be working at a coffee shop at the time, and so we played there. And it went well. We were like, hey, this is cool. And then that same coffee shop I worked at, they had another duo band come in, and I watched them and I was like, oh, you guys are so good. Like, I sing too, and I have a guitarist, and they're like, why don't you guys play more? So like, they kind of pushed me to like venture out and get our name out there. And Chris is just down to do whatever. Like,
yeah, he is. He's always like in bands or like just in bands for a day or everything.
Yeah. So after that, like we played a couple more coffee shops. Somehow, I don't even know how we got into like a winery, but we got into one, and then another one wanted us. And, eventually we had gigs here, there, and everywhere until COVID hit. That kind of killed our game a little bit, but
yeah,
we're back in it.
I killed everybody's gig. I was gonna say that I really love that you guys like got into Vineyards personally, because now I really like wine. I'm like, I finished all the shied wine in the house, and I'm like, can you do it like another shied gig? Because they'll give us wine.
All the wineries that we play at, they're probably one of my favorites, just because I specifically like their wine.
Yeah.
Bottles here at home, and I'm down to my last one, and it's really sad.
Yeah, like I'm not a wine snob. I'll drink any wine, but I have some that I appreciate more than others. So I've learned now from you guys gigging so much that I've now switched over to liking reds more than whites.
Mm-hmm.
And I specifically really like shied wine. Like any shied red wine, I will drink. I love all of it. Yeah. Even their white wines I'll like, but I feel like white wines give me a hangover. Anyways, I don't want this to be about a whole podcast about wine. But I do like some of the other ones. Like I feel like Puma Road was an acquired taste, but I know they make their wine differently. I'm trying to think of other ones you guys have gone. Have you played at Odonata?
We haven't played there. We've done Shy, we've done Puma Road, we've done
another one.
Pisano.
That's it. Yeah, that one was good.
Yeah. And
My
then
mom did a wine tour for work recently, and I think that's where I got the Odonata from. They did Odonata wine whenever they did her wine tour, and that was good. But yeah.
wine is good.
Anyhow, I think your mom's a big Scheid fan too, right? She joined the club.
Yeah, she joined the
I thought about it, and then I saw the price, and I was like, ooh.
yeah, so it's like a discount and gets wine every other month or something like that.
Yeah. And then, so I guess what everybody's wondering, because there was a lot of people interested in the whole surrogacy thing, is the whole surrogacy journey. So like, when did it start? When did all of that start? Like, I don't know. I guess, yeah. What is your beginning of that whole tale?
What is my beginning? If I can even think that far back, it was probably like 5 years.
Oh wow. Oh crap. I think you froze, and it's probably my fault. This happens a lot. I'm gonna hang out and see if it fixes itself. Awesome. So this happens a lot around here. The Jerry Berry podcast is not a perfect system. But you were saying
Getting,
what's that?
I said you're there.
Yeah, I'm getting there. This is why if you want to join my Patreon, you can help me out with that stuff. So I also have an Amazon wish list that's in the description of every single episode, just so everybody knows. Anyways, that started with Bevan's episode, because Bevan was like, get an Amazon wish list, buy Jerry stuff. So now I have one. But anyways, you were just telling us the beginning of your surrogate story, and you said like 5 years ago, and then we cut out.
Yeah. So the thought, dang, I talked a lot before I realized it was cut out.
Yeah.
Yes, the thought of surrogacy popped into my head like 5 or 6 years ago. And more so because there were females in my life, relatives and friends, who were trying to get pregnant and couldn't get pregnant, or got pregnant and unfortunately lost their babies. So I witnessed a lot of that. And then here I have a 14-year-old, Emmaus. And so I had him at 17, which clearly at 17, you're not trying to have a baby.
Yeah.
But I easily had one. And so I just felt like, if I could do something, what could I do? And then again, surrogacy came into mind. But I pushed that thought to the side only because I thought, like, that's crazy. Who does surrogacy? Who gives babies to people?
Yeah.
So I left it alone for about like a year and a half. And then that thought was still there. And I decided to pursue it. And this was actually when I was still living in Monterey County. And I went through an agency in San Diego, started the process with them. Every agency is different. And unfortunately, this one, for whatever reason, my past medical records caused me to be denied. And I was heartbroken. I like cried because at this point I was going in full force, wanted to do it and be a surrogate. So when they denied me, I was like if I lost my own child, I was so sad. So then I let another year go. And then that's when I moved to the Fresno area and found a local agency here. And on January of 2020, 2020, when COVID started, basically, is when I signed up with that agency, and everything, I was clear, I was good to go, started the process and got matched. And yeah.
That's awesome. So you already had a surrogate baby, but didn't you find out you were pregnant in like January of 2021? Or was it December of 2020? It was somewhere around there, right?
Yeah, so I signed up to be a surrogate in January of 2020. I met the intended parent because he was a single dad. I met him via Zoom because he lived out of the country it was like end of February, beginning of March of 2020. And so we were going to start the process, but because of COVID, kind of shutting the world down, basically, we let like 3 months pass before the fertility clinic was accepting patients to come in for transfers. So my process kind of was a little bit longer, only because there was like a 3-month pause. But embryo transfer was January of 2021. January 8th of 2021, so almost a year ago. So yeah, they put the embryo inside, and I mean, from that point on, we knew I was pregnant, unless if for whatever reason it didn't stick, but it did.
Yeah, that's cool. So when did you hear the first heartbeat?
First heartbeat was probably like officially like 6 weeks later.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's crazy because like most women don't find out they're pregnant till, between 6 and like 10 weeks pregnant, sometimes long, but like day one.
Yeah.
Like,
I think unless you are a person that is like really planning your kid and you really know your cycle, it's going to be like 8 to 12 weeks before you know for sure that you're pregnant. I feel like for most people, at least.
yes.
Like with Jared, I was definitely at like around 12 weeks before I knew I was pregnant because I wasn't planning it. With Haley, we were planning it, and I had my I had my app and I knew all my shit before we even tried to have Haley. So I knew like I was doing the P tests like regularly. So then I knew pretty much at the like 5 or 6 week mark that I was pregnant.
Yeah, it's crazy knowing so early. Like it definitely made those first like 20 weeks, like it made the whole pregnancy seem forever long.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I feel like you've been pregnant forever. And I was like, it's because we knew.
Yeah.
So
if you think about it, if you don't know until 10 to 12 weeks, then you've already gotten through almost 3 months of pregnancy without even knowing it. So like I remember with Jared, I hadn't even seen a doctor until I was 16 weeks pregnant because I was moving across the country. And so I was in the midst of changing insurances and everything.
Yeah.
So I had taken at-home pregnancy tests. I hadn't had my period for forever. So I knew I was pregnant. But, like according to the government, you need like the doctor's test to say, even though it's the same freaking test that you take at home. There's no like magical test at the doctor's office. They literally just take your urine and test it like you do at home.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like 16 weeks before I saw a doctor and was officially stamped like pregnant. But yeah, so, and then I know that you use the word embryo transfer, and not every listener will know this. So that whenever there's an embryo transfer, that means it was a fertilized egg in like a petri dish that they put into your uterus, correct?
Yes, basically. So there's two different types of surrogacy. There's traditional and gestational. I'm a gestational surrogate, meaning my eggs were not used. So I'm just basically the body or the incubator, sometimes is how they describe it. Traditional surrogacy would be if the surrogate was willing to use her own eggs. So in my case, again, I was a surrogate for an intended father. So he, obviously his sperm, and he got an egg donor. And so they put those two together, had an embryo frozen and ready to go. And so then I went into the fertility clinic, and literally it was like this long straw. And the doctor was like, okay, there's the embryo. Like, we're just gonna insert it in. And it was painless, took maybe 5 minutes. Like, then he's like, all right, you're all done.
It's so crazy. But you did a lot of stuff to get ready for it, right? So for those that don't know Melisah or don't follow her on social media, it's really cool because I got to see your whole process like through your stories, and I always followed along with it. I don't think Chris did as much because he's not a big story guy, but I would always keep him up to date. And I was in your group. I was in like your polish and pour group, and you were doing a lot in there too. But anyways, so you had to do a lot of preparation to get ready for an embryo transfer, right?
Yeah. So basically, because I'm not doing it the traditional like having sex way, we as gestational surrogates, and probably even traditional, the agency I work with, they only work with gestational surrogates. So I'm not too familiar on the traditional side, but you have to go through IVF treatment.
Yeah, I was just going to say your process is very similar to those that have to go through IVF, which is where for some reason they can't get the egg to the uterus. So they can actually get egg donors or extract their own eggs. Then they get the sperm or a sperm donor, put them together in a dish, and then they insert it into the woman's womb. It's just in your case, you're not like the biological egg giver.
Yeah. So they had us, or they had me do the whole IVF process. So going even all the way back of putting me on birth control to like time my period accordingly.
Mhm.
And then started medication, and then medication included everything from pills to then injections. Like at some point I did one whole month, like that whole month of December of 2020. I did injections. Like there was the injection in the abdomen, you know, a lot of it was to like thicken the uterus of the lining, you know, prepare and make everything to stick for the embryo transfer. Because if you think about it, these intended parents, some of them only have a limited amount of embryo set aside, and not every embryo sticks. Like that's also a risk they take.
Yeah.
Which is why sometimes too, a lot of times they want to transfer multiples,
Mhm.
just because it's like these are all they have.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we as surrogates prepare our bodies, you know, as much as we can so that it does stick, and then there's not like I hate to say wasteful embryo, but like a lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. So I had questions and I didn't write them down, and I should have. But the first thing that popped into my head was, while you're doing IVF treatments, do they worry about your own, like you releasing your own eggs?
No, only because one, there's the birth control aspect of it, and then we're also taking things, and there's a period of time too where we can't have sex.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so there's a good section of about a month and a half where they tell you not to be physical, not to have sex with anybody, because then there is that risk of like
Yeah.
you getting pregnant.
Yeah. So I guess specifically you can't have like penis penetrative sex in that point.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so there's a bit of that, and then of course the medications they put us on are all to help so that none of my eggs drop in that moment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about, because I know people that go through IVF, or people that just do like artificial insemination and all types of fertility things. Sometimes it's the opposite, where they're trying to get their bodies to drop more eggs so that there's more of a chance. And that's how a lot of like IVF and artificial or fertility, people that go through fertility treatments end up with multiples in some rare cases, because they've been taking hormones to get their bodies to release more.
Yeah. No, it's just basically the opposite for surrogate.
That's crazy. And then the other thing too, you mentioned something about like having so do you get to request so how does it work if you don't want multiple embryos inserted, or does the IP get to pick that, IP being intended parent? Because I don't think we clarified that.
Oh yeah, sorry.
But does the IP get to pick if they want to put multiples? Do you guys have to match on that, or how does that work?
It's a matching process. So it's honestly like dating. Like the app where you fill out all these questionnaires, and this is all in the beginning process of when you sign up to be a surrogate. They'll ask you your preferences, like everything from are you willing to carry a single embryo, or transfer a single embryo, multiples, all the way up to like triplets. If like in my case, I did put one embryo at a time, so they're only going to match me with parents who are willing to do one at a time. But something else that comes up in multiple questions that are asked to you is if that one embryo happens to split, which can happen. It's rare, but it can happen. If I'm okay at that point carrying twins, or would I want to terminate one? And again, it comes down to the parents as well. Like,
whatever you say has to match with whatever they say. And that is okay.
Not a good match. Everything down to like whether it's like an open surrogacy or closed surrogacy. And again, kind of think like adoption. Like there's some surrogates who just want to give the person the baby, don't want a relationship with the intended parents. And then there's surrogates like myself where I would much rather have a relationship. So they match me with intended parents who want a relationship with their surrogate.
That's crazy how much has to go into it to like match you up with the person that best fits you. I like some of the stuff I don't even think about, especially whenever you had a post recently about like what you were saying with the twins and terminating the pregnancy, and you were like, now that I'm on, because you're doing your second round, spoiler alert. So you're going to start your second process, right? And
Yeah.
you were saying like, here's all the things I've learned to pay more attention to now that I've done it once. And it talked a lot about matching with people that deal with like termination for any reason, whether it's like
Yeah.
struggles or whatnot. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
No, it's
So
also
things I
one of
wouldn't even
those
think about.
too where like I think as surrogates, and again, I don't speak for all surrogates, but for those that I've gotten to know during this process, like we all have this mindset of like, it's obviously it's not our baby. And at least for me specifically, like I leave all the decision making, like 99% of it, up to the intended parents as if it was their wife or the female or whomever carrying it.
Mhm.
Whole process of it, like unless my life is physically at risk, then obviously I would change things. But like with this second journey that I'm doing, we're going to transfer one, and then again they asked like if the embryo splits, Melissa, are you comfortable carrying two? And I said yes. They were okay with carrying two, because then again too, some intended parents may not be prepared
For twins. Yeah.
yeah. um my last intended parent what said he wouldn't be okay if it split, because I don't think he was, he's a
Yeah.
single, not prepared for two, he's prepared for one.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so many details that go into it, and I did a ton of research prior, only because I knew when I brought the idea of me being a surrogate to like friends and family, like I knew I was going to get like the weird looks or the like, are you crazy
Yeah.
comments, which I did. So I wanted to be prepared with my answers when people had questions. And I've done really well, but even doing tons of research, there were things in my first journey that I didn't think about. Like when I filled out the application for the first time, some of the questions are, what kind of intended parents do you want to carry for? Do I only want to carry for married male and female couples?
Okay.
For like unmarried male and female couples? Am I comfortable carrying for like gay couples, single mothers, single fathers? Which the single ones, I didn't even think like there's single people out there who want children like
Yeah.
on that. So yeah, there was questions like that like I never thought of with my first journey. When we were having our match meeting and questions were being asked, like even questions about my diet, like I have to reveal some of those things just to make sure that like the intended parents are okay with it. They had asked the intended parent, how many embryos do you have like ready to go? And he had 6 of them. And he already knew at that point that 3 were girls and 3 were boys. Like,
Crazy.
I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know you find out so early.
I had no idea.
Exactly. And then they asked him, like, oh, do you know like which one are you going to pick? Or are you just going to like close your eyes and pick an embryo? But he had already decided at that point he was going to transfer a boy embryo. So even before starting medication, even before a transfer, like we were like, it's a boy. Like we already knew. It was crazy.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
had a question that I forgot to ask about the birth control aspect. So you were just in normal life on birth control, right? You had like the arm thing.
Yeah, I had the implant.
And then you removed that, and then did they put you on a pill?
Yeah, they put me on the pill again, because with the NuvaRing, and I know with the Depo shot and even with the implant, like some women's periods can be sporadic or none at all.
Yeah.
So at least with the pill,
You
they're
get a
able,
period. Yeah.
yeah, they're regulate it more, which is
Did,
what they want.
did you have any weird, well, I guess there's a lot going on with your body at that time anyways, because you're doing injections and everything, but did you have any weird side effects changing birth controls?
No, even with the birth control I had prior, like the implant, I loved the implant more so because I'm very forgetful with pills. So I panicked when they're like, we need you on birth control pills. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to forget.
Yeah.
I literally had to set a timer, like in sticky notes, like take your pill. Side effects, like because of those, the only thing with the birth control pills is they made me nauseous.
Yeah,
Like,
I felt that too whenever I was in high school. I haven't
yeah,
been on birth control since I was 18. So
No, not like for me personally, obviously I'm gonna do it again and I would do it again for surrogacy, but for me personally, like I would
So
not do made me sick.
you gave birth in September, and then did you go on birth control? Are you on birth control now? Like, did you go back to your normal stuff, or how's that work?
No, only because I kind of knew deep down right away that as soon as I was able to start another journey, I was gonna start it right away.
Okay.
Um, so when I had my 6-week postpartum appointment, you know, they ask you that, like, oh, you know, do we need to go over birth control? And I was like, no, um, only because no matter what I chose, I would be taken off of it to go on what the fertility clinic is prescribing me.
Yeah. So now you've just been birth control free.
Yeah.
Has that been weird? Is there been, I know some women that have like literally have like detox symptoms after getting off of birth control.
Mm-mm, not
That's
for
cool.
me. Yeah.
I'm a
But like,
huge advocate for birth control. I just want to say that first and foremost because I don't want any haters out there. I think birth control is amazing for women. I am
yeah.
just also a huge advocate for the idea that men should be taking birth control. And for my personal body beliefs, I do not take it. And I haven't taken it since I was in high school. I did not want a kid in high school. So I talked to my dad and my stepmom, and I was on birth control from like 16 to 18. And then once I moved out, I wasn't on their insurance and I just never got it. And
Yeah.
I realized that I felt better in my body by not having it. So I've never taken it.
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah.
women, I know some women's bodies react very differently and strangely. So I'm kind of with you on that. Like, if it works for your body, go for it. If it doesn't, like, and you don't want kids, just be smart. Like, so
Yeah. And I always fight for like I guess I don't fight for it. I'm not like out there in the streets, but I'm a huge advocate for just like there's like the double standard. Like whenever I was pregnant, the whole time I was pregnant with Haley, I was on Medi-Cal. So I understand why they're concerned because the state doesn't want to keep paying for you to have kids.
yeah.
But like for me, they knew my record. They knew that I went 6 full years without having a baby and I wasn't on birth control. So clearly I must know what I'm doing to some extent. Like
Right.
but it was like every single appointment they wanted to bring up birth control, and not once did they ever ask Chris how he planned on preventing pregnancy. They only asked me how I planned on preventing pregnancy.
It's all up to us.
And then like finally at the 6 week postpartum, that was the last appointment that I had to go to those doctors for since I was on Medi-Cal. I was like, thank God this is freaking over because I can't stand these people anymore. That's the only downside to Medi-Cal. But you know, beggars can't be choosers. And they asked me, they were like, you know, what are you going to do for birth control? Should I prescribe it? And I just said no. And then I let like the dead air sit there, and the doctor and the nurse stood there, and we all stared at each other awkwardly. And then after like a solid minute, he was like, all right, I guess you can make an appointment, you know, if you want to come back in a year. And I was like, cool, see you never. Like, bye.
Okay.
But yeah, like it's just so ridiculous because, and then as I'm driving home, I thought of all the things I should have said just to mess with them. Like, oh no, me and my husband are celibate unless we only want to make children, or like something. I could have said so many crazy things in that minute, but like anyways, I'll get off the birth control soapbox. And I was gonna ask about, because I've had people like, since we're in the same circle and you sing with my husband and stuff, people ask me questions about your surrogate journey. I don't know why they automatically assume that I know everything about your journey, but
Yeah.
whatever. So I've had multiple people in my life ask how it works with you carrying a baby for a person in another country, because your IP, as you said, is not from America.
Yeah.
And so instantly I have friends and family that are like, oh, that's an easy way for immigrants to get to America, right? And I'm like, I don't think that's how that works. But but I don't have the answers that they're asking. So that's what I was curious about. How does it work whenever you're carrying for a person from another country?
So I think in this case, it depends on what country they're coming from. So my last journey, my IP was from Shanghai, China. And because he's a single father, he is gay. So surrogacy over there in general is not legal.
Okay.
And which is why they come to the US for surrogates. There's a lot of loopholes that technically end up being legal by the time he gets back. And if I'm being real honest, there's a lot of like paperwork he had to go through. He just flew back to Shanghai like a couple days ago, and Surro baby was born in September. So there was a process. He had to stay in the US. He had to wait for, being that Surro baby was born in the US, Surro baby is a US citizen. So there's a lot of, he had to wait for birth control, social security card, a lot of paperwork from China. There's a lot of details that, again, that some of them even still go over my head. But yeah, it's because he can't do surrogacy over there. They come to America for it. I know with the agency I'm with, they do have a lot of intended parents from other countries like Israel, which was a potential match for me. I didn't end up going with that couple, but they were from Israel. Germany is another one. Australia, I believe, is another one. And then, of course, there's parents in the US. But being a surrogate for intended parents out of the country is actually very common.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming they
like
would just have to do some sort of paperwork for adoption at that point. Or, well, I guess if it's his sperm, then it wouldn't really be adoption. I don't know. That's so weird.
Yeah. So I know in my case with my last journey, he did ask me to put my name on the birth certificate.
Well, that's cute.
Yeah. I love how you're like, cute. I freaked out when they asked me that, but at that point, when those questions were being presented to me, I already had my lawyer that the agency, kind of provides for you. And that's actually common. Again, for my name will be taken off, but in the process of him getting baby boy back to his country, like a mom's name needs to be listed on there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just to get him back to Shanghai. And then at some point, and again, there's just details that go over my head, but at some point my name won't be on there anymore. And of course we're bound by legal document that like whether my name is on there or not, like
you don't pay anything, you don't own anything. Yeah.
Yeah, like we'll not have to pay child support. This baby's not. But just to help him get back home, they will ask surrogates a lot of the time to like, help them out. It's crazy.
I think that what was I gonna say about that? I don't remember. Because my computer went off and it distracted me. But oh, I know what I was gonna say. With the crap, I keep losing it. It's like I know what I want to say, but anyways. I was gonna say, I don't remember what I was gonna say just now, but what I was thinking of too is like I know certain states in the US are either already doing it or are working on changing wording for birth certificates and for all federal documents or state documents with that, because so many people don't have moms or don't have dads, or there's like non-binary people now, or they, or they're born via surrogacy. So it's like, I know some people are changing the paperwork to say the birthing person and stuff like that, because if you don't identify as a mom but you gave birth, or if you in your case you gave birth to a baby but you're not the mom at all, you're just the birthing person. And I think that's what some people don't realize, because I know with a lot of people's belief systems, they probably don't want paperwork stating those sorts of things.
Sure.
But there's so many other reasons to change the wording other than gay couples or single parents, or whatever you don't believe in is totally up to you. But for the case where another person is giving birth for you, even if you are a normal happy hetero couple that are married and align with all the beliefs in the world, if you can't have a baby, you still have a separate birthing person. And I just think changing the wording on all of that is super cool for those reasons. And I guess I didn't even really think of that happening for surrogates until you just said that, and how they would need a mom on it.
And I even think, again, just being that my intended parent was from China, I can only speak on that country. I'm not sure what rules or what hoops they have to jump through if they're from Israel or Australia or Germany or whatever. But I know like just having a female name on the birth certificate like helps so much for the baby just in general. Like one, obviously to get back home, but even thereafter, like again, I don't know how or why or what strict rules and regulations they have out there, but from what I've learned, like even having a female name on the birth certificate when the baby signed up for school is just better off for the baby.
Yeah. Like, so I would assume socially for that country, it looks better.
Mm-hmm.
I remember what I was going to say now. And it was, whenever you were talking about your lawyers, I think that's why going through, from what I've heard from other people, that's why going through an agency is important instead of doing like a Craigslist deal. Right. Because then you're all covered on all angles all the time.
Yeah. And I think that was something that like my parents were worried about was, like I said, I know especially my dad, like my sister would tell me like, oh, I talked to dad today and like he brought up again, like, you know, and she's going about it the right way, right? And like obviously as a surrogate, I'm getting paid to do this. That wasn't my main reason for doing it, but there is a financial aspect in it. But yeah, my dad would always be like, and she's getting paid, like they're taken care of, like, and she's like, yes, there's lawyers, like contracts were signed. If there's no follow through on their end, like they're screwed, you know? And not even just in that aspect though, but like the agency, at least specifically with the agency I'm with, like they take care of everything. Like they already had a list of lawyers that I can choose from. So I got to pick the lawyer. I could have gone with someone outside, but like I've never needed a lawyer. I wouldn't even know where to start to look for that.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a list of lawyers and I got to pick between those. The same thing with like doctor's offices. And when it comes to the money portion of it, intended parents have to have a certain amount of money in an escrow account. And they can't go lower than a certain limit. And again, that's just to guarantee that there will be money there for whatever monthly payment is due, or if something medically came up, that there's that money to fall back on. So there's a lot that goes in that the agency does that like I just got to roll with it. Like it was taken care of.
You didn't have to worry about paying a lawyer or paying for doctor's visits or any of that. Correct. Did you have to go, since I'm assuming you were on Medi-Cal, that might be a wrong assumption, but did you have to go through a Medi-Cal doctor, or did you get a list of doctors you could pick, or how did that work?
Once everything surrogacy wise started, so basically after I took my birth control out, everything after that, all the doctor's appointments I had to go through was all through the surrogacy agency. So at that point it didn't have insurance, and so like I needed to get like a pap smear done. So they referred me to a doctor and I was cool with going that doctor, and then they paid for it. The surrogacy agency, they paid for that portion. Once I was officially matched at that point, then I'm put on insurance that's paid for by the intended parents. So for the whole 9 months of pregnancy, even like maybe like 2 or 3 months prior and 3 months after, you're on insurance, you know, that's paid for by the intended parents.
And then you can just go see a doctor in network with them and go to a hospital and network for that insurance.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. How was your experience at the hospital as a surrogate? I mean, like in the actual labor delivery process, I guess.
It was pretty easy. Because you're pre-registered, obviously like every woman pre-registers. Mm-hmm. But then the social worker that works there, so she already knew I was coming in as a surrogate. Mm-hmm. So there was paperwork again and like birth certificate. And then in my case, the intended father wasn't able to be there for the birth, mm-hmm. Which sucks. He was like, his flight, I gave birth on a Monday and he flew on Friday. Like his scheduled flight to come in was on a Friday.
The baby just came like a smidgen too early.
Yes, a little too early. But yeah, so everything beforehand, like the social worker called me and she was like, this is what you'll do when you come in. I think the only like weird part as far as labor and delivery were like the nurses didn't know or the doctor didn't know. So in the beginning, they'd be like, oh, like, what are you naming your baby? Or like, do you want to, when the baby's born, do you want to do skin to skin or are you going to breastfeed? And so then I had to be like, well, I'm actually a surrogate. So, you know, had the intended father been there, he would have done skin to skin, but he had requested if he wasn't there, if I could do skin to skin. So at that point I did do that.
So did you have like sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but did you have like a birthing plan that you brought in or no?
Yes, that was kind of all through the social worker. She asked she asked all the questions, like that one, like skin to skin. Does the intended father want you to do that? Are you comfortable doing that? Like again, the breastfeeding portion, like obviously I was like, I'm gonna pump, but I'm not gonna physically breastfeed the baby. So there was kind of like not weird, but just I had to do a lot of clarification with any nurse that came in. And then at some point, I guess the communication wasn't followed through with because I had 2 different lactation nurses come in and they were like, breastfeeding gone. I'm like, it's not. Like, it's not. This is not my baby. And they're like, oh. So, yeah. But like everything was just as normal as any other labor and delivery.
You didn't like you didn't feel like the nurses were like mean or weird or rude? Okay,
no,
that's cool.
my nurse, I like if I could have her again, I would totally have her again. Just in general as a nurse, she was great. Like she totally like cared for me, like listened to what I had to say. Totally was like being an advocate for me. I loved her. It was my doctor I did not care for. And it wasn't the same doctor that I would see for the
yeah, it sucks whenever that happens.
Yeah, no, it was the doctor that was on call and I made it very clear that I didn't like her very much. So like with this journey, if I happen to get her again, I would be like, like no, give me the other doctor on call. Yeah. We're great. The doctor, I don't know if she just had a bad evening or what, but I think for the most part, like they're just worried about you having a healthy baby. They can care less if you're a surrogate or not.
Yeah, I feel like depending on where you are or the state you live, it could be different because of people's beliefs. But I think in California, we're lucky that it's pretty liberal here and people are kind of used to it. Like nobody ever gave us problems with Chris while Chris was there for Jared's birth, even though they all knew that it was like a new relationship and he wasn't the dad.
Yeah.
But they were chill about it. They weren't mean to him or like asking him to leave.
That's good.
And then you gave birth in September. So COVID's still pretty much a thing. Did you have like a limited number of people that were allowed to be with you? And did you have to wear the mask the whole time and yada yada?
They did ask us to wear a mask when the nurses came in.
Yeah.
But I was in so much pain because I gave birth with no meds.
No,
and so
congrats to you.
so like I could care less if they wanted me to have a mask on. Like I was giving birth to a child.
Yeah.
At that point, they don't care.
Yeah.
Again, they're more worried about you delivering a healthy baby. I know with my sister, like she kept hers on because, and I was only allowed one person, which was my support person, and that was my sister. Although in like, I guess you could say the birth plan that I had with the intended father, had he been there for the birth, if he wanted to be in the room and I could only have one person, I would have wanted him in there. Because again, this is his baby. This is his journey, his process. Unless for whatever reason, like something's wrong with me, then have my sister in there. And I've kind of said the same thing for this next journey. Like if we're still in deep COVID times where I'm only allowed one person, like they ask you, like, who do you want in there? And I say the same answer, like the intended parent.
Yeah.
So
are you cool with the intended parents just seeing all the things?
Yeah.
Or were you like, does he have to stay north or can he just go anywhere?
I think I want to say in the beginning, I did say like if he could stay like behind me. But if I'm being real honest, like you're in the middle of pushing out a human. Like at that point, I don't care who sees me and what they see. Like it is, I mean, your legs are already in the air, like
Yeah.
you're completely exposed. That's the thing I'm thinking about. Because I remember I was probably like 8 months pregnant, and I think my brother-in-law asked me that. He was like, "Are you gonna let the dad like see?" And I was like, honestly, probably. Like,
Yeah.
again, not thinking about like, oh, don't look down there. Like,
Yeah.
I'm about, like, get this child out. Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I never cared about that. I never, well, I guess I never cared about that. Chris definitely did not want to see any of it. He was very clear because we tried to do the home birth route because of COVID and because of my my new beliefs as a person giving birth to Haley compared to like 21-year-old Jerri with Jared.
yeah.
So I really wanted to try the home birth, and then COVID really pushed us into committing to it, and then it didn't work and I had to go back to the hospital. But I was super glad that my since I had an established midwife, the hospital we went to allowed the midwife and Chris to be there for all of labor. And then since I had to get a C-section, they allowed the midwife to stay with me while Chris went with the baby. That way I wasn't alone, which was really nice. But if I wouldn't have had the midwife like already pre-established and proven, then I would have just been alone in recovery and Chris would have went with the baby.
Yeah.
And that would have been super sad.
Yeah.
So I got lucky with that. But yeah, I feel like I didn't really care. Like I kind of did, but at the same time I kind of didn't. I don't know. It's weird. Like,
no,
I think the only time it's weird is just like I don't know you and your hands are just in all these places. Like
yeah.
like, I literally don't know you. But at the same time, you're like, I'm in a lot of pain and I'm so fucking over this. And like, I just need to give birth to a baby. And I remember getting to the hospital with Haley after being at home for 24 hours in labor, contractions like every 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get there and they're like, we need to check you. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, just give me the drugs. Like, I know what the drugs feel like and I want them now. Please and thank you. And they're like, we have to check you first. And then my midwife is like, just give her, you know, they have like narcotics they can give you that wear off quickly. I'm like, just give her one of those. And I'm like, oh, thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much. And then they give that to me and then they do their whole process. And of course they come in to check and see how far dilated you are. And I'm like, this is weird. We just met. And then they're like, oh yeah, you've only dilated like 2 centimeters. You'll be here for a few days. And I was like, did this bitch just say days? Not that she herself is a bitch. I don't even know her. It's just like, oh my God. Like days.
No, I think like the end, I think by the end of the pregnancy, like I just got, I mean, as weird as it sounds, like I just got so used to like someone putting their hand up there and checking. You know, they'd be like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, whatever, like here.
We're all here, whatever. I remember whenever I went to my first appointment. So I go and I go to make an appointment for them to just say that I'm pregnant, right? You have to go to the doctor, be on a stick, and they tell you you're pregnant. And then they schedule you for your very first like OBGYN appointment through Medi-Cal. And then they're like, oh, you haven't gotten a PAP in so long, so we'll have to do all of that. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. So they schedule it. And then at that time, it was in January. So COVID hadn't happened yet. It was like known of over in China, but it wasn't here yet.
Yeah.
So they let Chris go with me. So Chris went to the first appointment because he didn't get to do that with Jared. My mom went with me for everything with Jared because me and Chris were still new, yada, yada, yada. So he shows up and he had never been to a female doctor appointment before in his life.
Oh my
and
God.
So he's sitting in a chair and, you know, you have like the weird ass paper napkin shit covering your lap and you're sitting there naked. And then you have like some weird paper napkin thing that covers your boobs a little bit. And like, and then they come in and I lay down and he can't like see down there from where he's sitting. He just sees my knees up in the stirrups with like a napkin, but he sees all the tools that they're pulling out. So like he literally was sitting in the chair like this, like wide-eyed with his t-shirt covering his mouth, like and his eyes were getting wider as they kept doing things. Like
he's like, what are they putting up there?
because there's like a speculum and then the weird toothbrush thing to do the pap smear, and then she has to like check your ovaries, right, which is like a whole thing. And he's like, Jesus Christ, like what is happening right now? Like
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
and then yeah, he pretty much didn't go to anything after. I think he went to like one other appointment after that, maybe. And
Mhm.
that was it before COVID happened. And I had to do everything by myself. They did let him go to him and Jared got to go to like the first ultrasound that I went to, maybe in like February. But then after that, I don't think he was able to go. I had to go by myself for like
Mhm.
the 20-week one
Mhm.
where you find out the gender traditionally.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was interesting. But I'm glad that you had a pretty good experience at the hospital. How long was your labor?
Um, so my water broke. It was like a 2 p.m. on a Sunday. Um, I went on a 3-mile walk that day. I did a lot of walking while I was pregnant. So 3 miles, I know that sounds like a lot to some people, but that was pretty normal for my pregnant self. Although I probably pushed it a little bit being so far along because I was 37 weeks pregnant at that point. And so like I went home and I was taking a nap with my dog and I couldn't get comfortable, which was normal. Like at this point, sleeping was just not a thing for me.
Yeah.
And so I was maybe laying down for like an hour and a half and I was like, oh, screw it. Like, I'm just going to get up. So I remember getting up off the bed and with Emmaus, with my son, my water didn't break. So I didn't know the feeling or what it was like. And so I get up off the bed and I just feel like, it literally felt like I had a weight up here and it just dropped. And I was, that's weird. And then the next thing I knew, like I just had water coming down my legs. If I remember correctly, I was wearing shorts or a dress because I live in Fresno where, it's hot as balls over the summer.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I'm pretty sure my water's breaking. And so I walk out, and I was living with my sister at the time. So I walk out and she had hardwood floor and I'm standing there and I look out towards the kitchen where they're all standing in the kitchen preparing stuff for family dinner for Sunday. And I was like, nobody panic. I was like, but I'm pretty sure my water broke. And as I'm saying that, like a puddle is forming like, underneath by my feet. And my sister's like, shut up. And I was like, I looked down and I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's so I was like, I feel fine. I'm fine. Like there's no need to panic.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm gonna go gather the rest of my bag because in true classic Melissa, the procrastinator that I am, I didn't have my bag fully packed. And so I'm waddling myself, getting my stuff ready. My sister finished making the macaroni salad that was going to be served at family dinner. And even my nephew, he was like, Mom, why are you still here? Like, Thea Melly is like going to have the baby. And I'm fine. Like, at that point, I wasn't having contractions.
Yeah.
So we grabbed all our things, put it in the car, packed my dog stuff because I was going to drop him off at the doggy daycare. I drove to the doggy daycare.
That's funny.
Yeah, drove to the doggy daycare, dropped him off. My sister's on the phone. She's calling like my mom and my dad and whomever. I'm like, oh, Melly's water broke. We're going to the hospital. And while we're doing that, I'm ordering Panera bread off my phone. And I'm like, what do you want from Panera? And so order because I knew I wasn't going to eat if I didn't get something. So by the time we got to the hospital, it's probably already like 4:00. So we let 2 hours pass. Again, I had contractions. It took a while for them to get me checked in and up into a room. I was probably in the room another few hours. It wasn't until maybe like 8:30, 8:45 where I started to feel contractions and feel some active labor. And then it got pretty intense around 11 o'clock, but by like 12:18, Surrogate was born. So if you think from water breaking at 2 to 12:18,
like 10 hours.
It's a good while, but I always tell people like active labor was from like 8:30 to midnight.
Yeah.
Like, that's when the action started.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty standard labor. Mine were bad. Well, they weren't bad. They just never happened. Like my body doesn't want to push babies out. I had to get C-sections both times. They were both really long. I remember whenever I went into labor and you and Chris were at a gig And my
Yeah,
midwife, I texted my midwife and I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm having contractions, but it's been a while, but I think that's what these are. And then she comes over and she does all the, like, she puts the thing on my belly and she's like, yeah, it's very early labor, blah, 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 you know, just hang out, do whatever. It's never like it is in the movies. If people don't know that already, like, it's never like, my water broke, let's go, hurry. It's like, it's never like that.
yeah. I know first, like, I do know a couple, like one surrogate, like she, from the moment her water broke, it was maybe like an hour later, she was pushing the baby out.
Yeah, I guess there's rare cases like that, but
No, are like far few in between. Like,
yeah.
no, people laugh when they were like, you drove yourself like to the
Yeah.
hospital. I was like, my sister offered, but I felt fine. Like,
Yeah. It was like I sat around in my PJs, kind of like nauseous, because I had really bad nausea for both my pregnancies the whole time. So I just kind of sat around nauseous the whole time, just trying, like you said, to eat and stay hydrated, because you have to like build up to this whole thing that's going to happen. And
yeah.
like, yeah. And then by hour 24, I was like done with it. But what was I going to say about this? I don't remember. Oh yeah. Oh, I never experienced my water breaking whenever I was in labor with Jared after like 12-ish. I'm trying to think. No, I went to the hospital after 24 hours. And it was shortly after I got to the hospital after 24 hours at home. They wanted to break my water to see if there was like, you can get meconium in your water if your placenta is not functioning. And so they broke my water to check for that. And I did in fact have meconium in there, which meant my placenta wasn't working. So then they, you know, they start getting worried and all this fun stuff. But I remember definitely labor was instantly more painful once my water broke, because I was already in labor and it got super intense once that happened.
Yeah.
But I don't really remember the feeling of it because I was laying in a hospital bed and they broke it for me and there were like pee pads under me and all this stuff. But yeah.
That happened with Emmaus. My water bag was leaking. Like, I thought I was peeing myself, but then with him, I stayed at the hospital that night with no action. And it was that morning that they like got the big old stick and like water bag. So yeah, there's so much fluid that a woman's body holds. Like, I know it's so true, because like I remember with Emmaus thinking like that was a lot of fluid that just came out. And then with Surro baby, again, like my water broke. There was water all over my legs and on the floor. But then when I was in triage at the hospital, you know, she goes to check me, and in the midst of her checking me, like more came out. And I was like, holy crap, like where's
what is it?
She was like, oh, well, your water's definitely broken. Like, you're definitely staying. And I was like, well, I could have told you that. Like, so.
Yeah, I let even afterwards, like I don't think they have to do it as often with natural births, but since I had C-sections, they constantly have to like push down on your uterus to help it shrink. And then all kinds of, they have to come in and like do a whole setup because a lot of blood is going to come out. And I remember like them doing that with both kids and me being like, Jesus Christ, am I going to die? Like, how can one person lose that much blood and we're like okay with it? You guys aren't concerned at all? Like,
Right?
What's that?
This was after you had the kids?
Yeah, it's like in the day after, like recovering, and they're just making sure your uterus like shrinks back.
Yeah, no, they did that with me too, because I always remember they're gonna push on my stomach, and it wasn't the most comfortable feeling.
No, it's so horrible. And I feel like, I know that they don't have to do it all the time, but I think with C-sections they do it more often just to make sure, because your body didn't go through a natural process a lot of the time. And so, and then for C-sections it's even worse because you have like literally a scar on your stomach, like they're pushing on it and you're just like, just kill me now, like this is the worst, can you just put the epidural back in? Like this is horrible. But yeah, like, and I remember thinking like, that's a lot of blood, and the lady was like, oh no, it's okay, we always weigh it. They'll literally like take the pee pad and they'll put it on a scale to make sure you didn't lose enough. And I'm like, are you serious? Like,
wow. That's crazy.
It's crazy. But yeah, making humans is a weird process. But I don't want this to go on too long, and I wanted to ask some of these questions because they can be lengthy sometimes.
Yeah.
So the first question that I have from people, these are the social media questions, by the way, for those that don't know. If you're new here, we do Instagram questions, but it all automatically posts to Facebook, so they're from both. Anyhow, one person asked, do you feel like more or less about the same amount of responsibility for the Surro baby as you did for the baby that you kept?
That's a good question. That's one I have never been asked.
I haven't heard this question before, so I was excited to ask it.
Yeah, because like you said, you follow me on social media where I'm pretty much an open book, so I share all the questions. That's not one I've been asked before. I would probably say the same, if not a little bit more. Not that I cared any less when I was pregnant with my own.
Yeah.
But just more so, again, just speaking for myself and the journeys or the journey I've been on and the journey I will be on, like my next intended parents, they've had a pretty rough journey as far as being able to get pregnant. And so knowing like, here's their precious embryo that I have to carry for them and like care for, like that just puts a whole ton more responsibility on top of like, you are caring for a human, you know, and this human is not yours. But then again, knowing their story, like there is a little bit of added pressure. So if anything, it's the same and more, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I know for me as a pregnant person that was having my own babies and not somebody else's, I was never once worried about the pregnancy. Like I never once had a fear of pregnancy or labor or delivery. Like I guess in the moment when they declared a C-section was necessary, I had some worries going in, but I trusted the people that were working on me. So I didn't really worry. I was constantly worried about how I'm going to raise this kid. What am I going to do? Like as a parent, you're raising people. So yeah, I guess if I were to be a surrogate, I would worry way more about the pregnancy than I did with my own kids. I don't know why I didn't really worry. I guess because I didn't have any medical complications in my personal like journey with my kids. And like my doctors both times were just like, oh, you're so young, you're under 30, you're meant to have babies right now, don't worry about it, nothing will go wrong. Like and I was lucky enough that I didn't have anything go wrong besides needing C-sections. But yeah, I was just constantly worried like, oh, we have to get our house ready, now we're gonna have 2 kids, we have to baby proof everything again. And now I have to worry about being like a daughter, like I have a daughter and not a son, so this whole dynamic's gonna shift. Like I always panicked about the future, never like the right now. But I feel like as a surrogate, I'd be like, oh shit, I have to like keep this thing alive in here like right now.
Yeah, especially if you know how many embryos your intended parents have left.
Mm-hmm.
And again, not every first embryo transfer sticks. So I can only imagine how the surrogates feel. Like there's a couple surrogates that I know that the first transfer didn't take. So they're doing a second transfer. So like I can only imagine how they feel knowing that like you're basically on a limited amount of embryo.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. They do this, it doesn't have to deal with the Instagram questions, but I know from your stories they do offer therapy, right, through the agency that you go through.
Yeah, and most agencies will. They offer it, and you at least with my agency, I can do one or the other. I can take the therapist and speak to her as often as I need to, or I can do the surrogate support groups, which pre-COVID would be in person, where you just meet up with a bunch of surrogates, and that has been really great. We do ours via Zoom now. They're like once or twice a month, because then you're able to ask questions, and it's to somebody who can relate. Like some people are in their beginning process of surrogacy, some women who have done surrogacy before and maybe on their next journey. Like everyone's at a different stage, and so everybody has a little bit of input to give when you have a question. So the agency I'm with, they do require you to do one or both. Like you have to get some sort of like therapy.
Yeah, I would definitely want it. I don't know that I don't know if all people are open to therapy, but I feel like in that process it would be almost necessary. Especially if you have the pressure of the embryo transfer and then it doesn't take, and now it's like, oh my god, I feel like a failure, I let this whole person that hosts this person down or this family down, and that's like a lot of money down the drain. Like
yeah,
I would just like start to lose my mind a little bit if I didn't have a support system.
Yeah, no, you definitely need to have a good support system. The therapist that I had, like she was there for me even after the baby's born, and I utilized her more afterward because there were so many emotions. It's hard to describe, like not that they were physically coming for me, but it was like my hormones like trying to balance back out, and deep down, that's what it was. but I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so emotional. I'm crying all the time. Like, is this normal? And she's like,
Mhm.
you're fine. Like, everything's good. So we talked through everything. It was so, so helpful.
Yeah, that's why I loved having my midwife too, because even though I had to go get a C-section, I saw, and I had to go to the Medi-Cal clinic for my 6-week postpartum just because of Medi-Cal. But I loved having my midwife because that's like the best part about midwives is they are almost like therapists. They're all trained to handle all those situations. So she was really good at checking up on me and really asking good questions about like, you know, baby blues and postpartum depression and all that stuff. And I know her super well, so she knows me and she knows how I am as well. So she was even able to like keep better eye on it for me
Yeah.
since sometimes we're not self-aware.
Sure.
But yeah, so now that you brought that up though, um how was like the postpartum hormones? Do you think that like having to give the baby over to the person made it worse, better, or was it just normal like postpartum hormone stuff?
It's funny, like, I definitely think it was just normal postpartum hormones. Honestly, none of my emotions had anything to do with me giving a baby away. And that's one thing as surrogates,
Yeah,
we're not giving a baby away because it's not our baby
yeah,
to be. You can't give something to somebody that's not yours.
yeah,
And so that was something I made clear. I know I had like crazy me, literally like 5 days after I gave birth, I moved out of my sister's house into my own place.
mm-hmm.
Which was hard because I went from like a house full of people to just a house by myself. I have roommates, but like they're not always here.
Yeah,
And so I know in that like week of moving, like I was a hot mess. And I know, again, I'm really open when it comes to surrogacy stuff. And so I shared that on social media and like I made sure to tell like my dad and my mom and my sister, like, this has nothing to do with, or even just people in general on social media. I was like, this has nothing to do with me giving the baby away. Like,
yeah,
I had like, I want to say like I had no feelings towards that because
yeah,
I didn't like
yeah.
joyous feelings, but not like, oh my gosh, here you go. Like, no, it was none of that.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
I definitely think it was just normal women hormonal emotions going on.
yeah. I don't think a lot of people realize how much your hormones change after you give birth and what your body has to go through. Like, first of all, just the amount of adrenaline it takes to birth a baby, and then you finally come down from that, but you have to like care for this thing. If you're not a surrogate mother, it's like a whole, yeah. And
Yeah.
but not only do you, whether you have the stress of caring for a human or not, after you go through it all, your body's hormones like literally plummet because now there's a whole shift. Like
Yeah.
you're no longer serving a life in there, so all
Yeah.
your hormones have to shift drastically and very quickly. It's
Yeah. It's crazy because I don't remember any of this with my son. Again, I was like 18 years old. So half the things that happened went over my head.
mhm.
I don't really remember them. Looking back now, I think I really suffered from postpartum and it lasted a long time. But one, postpartum was never talked to. Like, nobody
Mhm.
talked to me. I had no idea what it was. Like, up until recently, I didn't realize it was a thing.
Mhm.
So that is something I feared a little bit as far as this first surrogacy journey going, was dealing with postpartum. Thankfully, I think with so much support and being able to
Mhm.
vocalize and talk with people definitely helped. But yeah, you're so right when you talk about like your emotions just plummet from like up here to like freaking flatten out to like
Yeah.
it's woman goes through in that moment.
I remember whenever Haley was born, and I was in the recovery room, and it because she was born at like 11-ish at night. So then Chris stays there in the room. He's sleeping like in the bed next to me, and Chris snores so fucking loud, and it was just getting on my goddamn nerves. And every time doctors come in, like every 2 hours, I can't hear what the fuck they're saying because he's snoring and like he's no help at all. So then the next day, I was like, "You have to go home tonight." And he was like, "Am I allowed?" And I was like, "Yes, I asked. If you leave, you just can't come back until 8 a.m. the next morning. That's totally fine. Like, you have to get out of here because I can't stand you right now. I love you so much, but you have to get out of here. I cannot listen to your snoring one more fucking minute." So normally I sleep through his snoring like a baby. And it wasn't keeping the baby up, because babies get used to that while you're pregnant because they hear the snoring like while they're in the womb. But it was just with all the stuff going on, I was like, I can't handle it. You have to go. So I remember him leaving that first night, and it was just me, baby. I have the TV on, the baby's sleeping in the little thing next to me. And then Chris is gone, and I just like cried. And I was like, I don't even know why I'm crying. I'm just crying because it's all the emotions are just like, I'm not feeling happy. I'm not feeling sad. I'm just crying. I'm just sitting here watching what is that show called with the four dudes that play jokes on each other? Like
Impractical Jokers.
Yeah, it's always on in hospital TVs. It's just always on. So I'm sitting there watching Practical Jokers, just like crying, like ugly crying. But yeah, it's crazy, dude. Hormones are ridiculous. Anyways, somebody asked, did you get paid and how much do they pay? Which we've already covered that you did get paid. But what's the going rate, I guess? Do you know? Can you say?
Yeah, it depends between each agency. Agencies are different. Most, I guess the starting rate is anywhere between 45 and 55,000 is like your standard base pay.
Okay.
The more experience you have, so if you're a second time, third time, however many times surrogate, you can get paid more because you're an experienced surrogate, and you know the process, you know what it goes through. And then there's kind of like they kind of break up those payments, you know, like the start of medication, you get an amount, embryo transfer, you get amount. And then once they get a fetal heartbeat, then it's like a job. Every month you get that paycheck.
That's cool. So is it like a flat rate and they just kind of break it up, or is it like a flat rate and then you get some here and there for other things? Like
it's a flat rate that's broken up. And then I know I recently shared on my Instagram stories, just to kind of make people aware of the things that surrogates consider. And I know you saw that, like if for whatever reason, if I needed a cesarean section, then there's an amount that I'm given for having that. Okay. If for whatever reason something goes terribly wrong and I need to have a partial hysterectomy, there's a portion of money that I'm given, you know, for that. Or if I have to have a full hysterectomy, like there's all those details of things that could possibly happen that you could get money for if those things happened.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then so somebody asked, like, how and or why did you decide to be a surrogate? I feel like we answered that, but if you have like a good concise answer that you like to give, you're free.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, one, because of the women in my life that I saw go through what they went through trying to conceive and start a family, getting pregnant and then losing that baby. And again, I had my son at 18 years old, not trying to. And so guilt is not the right word. Like I didn't feel guilty for that, but I just felt bad. Like here I was not trying to have a baby and I did easily. And then all during this time that I'm witnessing these women go through these things, you know, for the most part, I was either in a relationship or single. And at this point, I've been single for quite a while. So I just felt like I was wasting my like able body. Like and I know it sounds silly, but like I don't plan, not with somebody, I don't plan on having more kids right now unless like the man of my dreams wanted to pop up anytime now will be great. But until that happens, like I don't foresee myself having kids. And so I don't want to waste like my body that can carry a baby for somebody. So that was kind of my thought on it. And then again, like I'm a Christian. And so there was a lot of prayer that went over it. And I really just felt like God put it on my heart to become a surrogate and be a surrogate. And so just kind of following that calling is what I'm passionate about. And I did it. And I think that's kind of been my purpose in life right now.
That's awesome. I love that. I remember being inspired by you, and I was talking to Chris about it, and I was like, yeah, maybe depending on how this pregnancy goes with Haley, then like I could be a surrogate, because I'm the same way. I get pregnant so freaking easily. Like we were, I remember it was like September and we were like, maybe we'll try for a second baby. And then in November, we like had mentioned it to just a few people, like maybe my mom or my dad or like my brother or something. And I was like, yeah, we're going to try to have a baby. And then like December 8th, boom, I'm pregnant. It was like one time, like literally one time near my ovulation window on my app. And like, we were pregnant. And
Yeah.
so like, I just felt so lucky that it was so easy. So I was like, okay, if Melisah can do it, then I can do it. But my pregnancy with Haley was exactly like Jared's, and it was so hard. And I just throw up every day, all the time. I can barely eat anything. And then the fact that it ended in C-section again after 36 hours of labor, I was like, I cannot. Like, getting pregnant is so easy, but I can't put Chris through this nor myself through this any longer. Because Chris is the one that has to deal with me whenever I'm bitchy and like, I want Subway again. Like, like I can't. So,
and that's
yeah.
thing that like women, any woman considering to be a surrogate have to consider. One, most agencies you can't be a surrogate unless you've had a baby yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So most agencies, if not all, require that, just because again, they need to make sure that your body can physically handle a 9-month pregnancy, labor and delivery. And I can only imagine if like a young 20-something-year-old girl who's never had a baby became a surrogate, like their only thought process I can imagine is like getting attached to that baby. And then that'll be an entirely hot mess. Like,
yeah. And if you've never done it before, you don't have a baseline. So everything is new to you in like a really weird scenario.
yes.
So it's like a lot of information getting thrown at you and you don't even know what questions to ask. Like, I had no idea what I was getting into whenever I got pregnant with Jared because I was 21. And I learned all these things that you have to know about and ask and like do. And I was like, Jesus Christ, this is way more than I thought.
Yeah. So
and I'm just throwing up and sweaty the whole time and like peeing every hour.
yeah. So they definitely require you to have a child or children before becoming a surrogate. And then just taking into consideration too that like for the most part your pregnancies need to be like as less complicated as possible. If you've had complicated pregnancies, like again, because these intended parents have limited embryos, they're not going to allow a woman who's had complicated pregnancies, like give them this embryo and then it go wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is why, again, for whatever reason, the fertility clinic with that very first agency I signed up with, I think because for like a week or two, I had high blood pressure or something like that. So they denied me for that. But
okay,
something minor like that can be overlooked. But if it's something big that like you hemorrhage during labor and delivery, like I'm pretty sure they're not gonna want you to be a surrogate and risk that.
Yeah. And in my case, no parent's going to want to have to guaranteed pay extra to get a C-section whenever there's women that can do naturals. So
that could be one too.
Yeah, that was the first thing in my head was like, if I can't do a natural birth with this baby, like there's no reason to be a surrogate and put other parents through that whenever there's other capable bodies out there. I guess if it was like scarce around here, then I would consider it. But yeah. So then somebody else asked is there a cutoff age or what is a cutoff age for being a surrogate? Because we just mentioned like a viable body for an embryo. And I know at a certain age, maybe it's not okay. I don't know.
Agencies vary. But I want to say like 26, 27 is like the starting age. Although they may go younger if you've had children. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong, but I know the like cutoff age is like 38, 39. And at least with the agency that I'm with, because I remember my sister's 40. And so I had asked like the surrogate coordinator that I worked with the entire time. I was like, what is the age? And I want to say she said 40, but they themselves as an agency cut it off at 37, 38, only because at that point, they're hard to match with because intended parents want either a younger person, younger body, because obviously the older you get, sometimes the rougher the pregnancies. And so again, limited embryos, they don't want to risk it in, a 40-year-old's body. Not that there's anything wrong with being pregnant at 40. Again,
there's just a lot of money going into it and a lot of time and heartbreak and everything. Yeah. And I know like with just from my stepmom alone, because my stepmom had 4 kids, and with her very last one, which is my youngest sister, she was definitely, I can't remember how old she was at that time, but I think she was in her 30s, and with her first 3 she was in her 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And even with the last one, she had a lot of complications with like blood pressure, and it just felt harder in general on her body. And that's whenever she was like, I don't think I want any more kids. Like, I may be misspeaking for her. Maybe she did want more kids after that one, but I know that she had I remember her telling me that one was rough compared to her first 3 in her 20s.
Yeah, well, it definitely makes you question, like, can I do this again? Because again, I was pregnant with Emmaus at 17. So that was, I always tell people, it was like rainbows and unicorns and, sunshines and all of that. And this one, I'm 32 years old now. This one was a little more rough. It wasn't as easy. Like, I definitely got the morning sickness. I had more aches and pains. My legs and my feet got swollen this time around when none of those things happened before. But again, I think age just has a lot to do with it. Your body takes it differently.
Yeah. And each pregnancy is different. Like, even though there was a lot of similarities with Jared and Haley, they were still different in their own way too.
Yeah.
But I only have 2 questions left. And just to preface it before I ask this question, I like to be as open-minded as possible and not judgmental, and I like to not stigmatize things. So I have a lot of friends that enjoy cannabis and marijuana. I myself have enjoyed cannabis and marijuana. So somebody asked if surrogates are allowed to smoke weed or ingest cannabis while they're pregnant.
I'm like 99.9% sure the answer is no.
I kind of figured, but I wanted to ask since the person asked.
No. I'm pretty positive the answer is no. Again, it all kind of goes back to these intended parents have limited embryos. They don't want to risk, anything. I even know, like, filling out the application, they ask, like, how many people live in your household? Is there drinking that is done in your household? Is there smoking that's done in your household? So even with those questions, like, I'm like, I say 99.9, but I'm like 100% positive the answer is no.
Yeah, the only thing that I could imagine that would be cool with is if you had an intended parent that was a cannabis user themselves, and they were just like totally open. They were like, if I could get pregnant, then I would totally smoke while I was pregnant, yada yada yada. Or because for me, I love weed, and I loved it for a while since moving to California, but I chose not to ingest anything while I was pregnant with Haley or while I was breastfeeding with Haley. And then once I stopped, then I kind of got back into it, but I don't use it hardly at all anymore. I used it a lot as a student. It got me through college, but now that my work is like super chill and super easy peasy, I feel like I don't need it. But like
need it.
But and it's funny because I thought that I wouldn't quit while I was pregnant, but I just didn't want to. And I was like, I don't think my body needs it or my body wants it, so I'm not going to do it. But I thought that was interesting that somebody asked, and I figured it wasn't something that you would be asked commonly, or I hadn't seen it like in your stories, so I wanted to ask that one.
I hadn't been asked that one before. And again, back to like intended parents, I mean, who knows if there was an intended parent like into that. But then it also makes me think too, like, I wonder if they would consider, even if they're into it, consider wanting the surrogate to not be into it or do it again, because it is so expensive and because like embryo is at risk.
Yeah, for sure. And then the only other question I have is actually not from Instagram, but with my last episode that was just released on Friday, the person I had on, my friend Brianna, we were talking about Winnie the Pooh characters that we identify with. So I decided to ask every guest since her. So first of all, do you know of Winnie the Pooh? Like, are you aware of the characters?
Like, I know of the characters. I'll be honest, Winnie the Pooh is not a cartoon or a movie or anything that I've watched. So
do you identify with any Winnie the Pooh characters?
Definitely not Tigger. Like, well, I think because Tigger's like the super hyperactive like one, right?
Yeah.
I think maybe at work as barista, I'm a little bit of a Tigger. Because recently in the last like year, I've discovered I'm a little more of an introvert than I thought I was. I can definitely be extroverted when I need to be, like at work or with chasing windmills. And even then, like you can ask Chris, you know, he'll be like, introduce us. And I'm like, you introduce us. Why do I always have to introduce us? Like, or he'll be like, oh, go ask them about like, if I can get a bottled water. I'm like, you ask them, you want the water. Like, yeah. If I have to be extroverted, I will, and I can be. I think I also just need to build myself up to that. So at work, I could be a Tigger. I probably have Eeyore moments.
I have hard Eeyore moments. I have an Eeyore tattoo because I love them so much.
Of where like I feel sorry for myself, but just more of like I just have depressive moments sometimes.
Yeah, the same.
What is Piglet? What
Oh my gosh. So that I said that Jared, instead of my friend, we agreed that Jared's kind of a piglet because he's so awesome and he's so sweet, but he's like scared easily, but he actually helps out a lot and people don't really give him credit. So I was like, yeah, that sounds like Jared.
Maybe I have a little bit of Piglet in me. Maybe not so much like I love helping people, especially at work. Granted, I get the credit there, but I get scared of things. Like, so we have a Karen that lives next door. She's the worst. And like, I will avoid her as much as possible. I'm very much of like, don't poke the bear, don't bother it. Like, let's not add fuel to the fire. And not that my roommates are like that, but like her biggest issue is like if we play music loud, which by the way, we don't. She's just super picky. Doesn't like anybody parking in front of her house. So like I won't park in front of her house for the life of me. They will occasionally, and then like deep down, I'm like, oh my God, they're parked in front of her house. Like she's gonna come knocking on our door. Like last night as he got ready before they went out for New Year's Eve. And again, it wasn't loud, but I'm like, she's gonna come knocking on our door. Like I just wouldn't play the music loud. Like I'll just avoid it as much as possible. So maybe in that sense, like, because I get scared.
Yeah.
I hate. That's my thing.
I don't like confrontation. I'm very passive. I'm just like, no, it's fine. It's okay. And then other people try to stick up for me and I'm like, no, it's embarrassing. Like, just stop. Like there's times where I'll go to Starbucks with people and I'll order something. And 9 times out of 10, the issue at Starbucks is I clearly said hot. You asked me if I wanted it hot and I said yes, but then you give it to me iced because that's like the popular thing now is iced coffee. And I just take it and say, thank you. And then the person next to me will be like, didn't you ask for that to be hot? And then I'm like, oh, it's okay. And then the other person is like, oh, did you want it hot? We'll remake it. And I'm like, no, I'll just drink it. The universe wants me to have cold coffee. It's fine. Like, it's not poison. But I'm like stuck in this like weird thing. And I'm like, no, it's fine. And I just like drive away awkwardly. Like
barista, like I know that can happen, you know, accidentally make something wrong. And I'll be like, no, it's not a problem. Like we'll remake it. Like not a problem. But as the customer, even working in the restaurant industry, when I did for so long, like the same thing, they'll be like, you know, they'll be like, the fries are cold. It's fine. I'm going to eat them.
Yeah.
Fries are
whatever.
I'm not for them.
I'm like too nice and too passive. But yeah. And then like I always say, oh, you were talking about being introverted. It's funny because you and Chris are like, I didn't realize that you were so introverted. You and Chris are like the same. And people don't think Chris is introverted because he gets along with everybody. And he can talk to anybody about anything, but he's such like a quiet person and just wants to sit at home and just be at home and do his video games and his music and his YouTube and like.
Maybe that's why Chris and I get along.
Yeah.
Again, introverted when I need to be, but yeah, like I'm cool with being at home. Like I'll be at home right now. I'll just watch a movie or watch something on my phone. Like I'm pretty content doing that. I think too, being a barista where I have to be extroverted, like once a shift is over, like it's not even that I'm tired from the work shift. I'm just tired of talking to people. Like,
yeah, I don't remember where I learned this from or where I heard it, but it was talking about the difference between introvert and extrovert or a mix of the two. And it's like, where do you feel like your batteries are being charged? Do you feel like your battery is getting charged up whenever you're out talking to people, or is your battery is getting recharged whenever you're at home, right? Like, where is your charging station? What was that?
I've heard that before. Yeah. My charging station is at home when I'm by my dog. Like,
and that's how Chris is. And Chris's big thing is like, no, come to my house. I'll hang out with you if you come here. Like, I don't want to go there. There's people there. I want you to come here. Like,
yeah.
And I'm the exact opposite. If I sit at home for too long, I can just feel my body. Like, I'm like, oh, like that's why I couldn't be a stay-at-home mom. I was like, I'm dying here. I'm dying. Like, I need to get out and be with people. And so, yeah, even like at work, because I'm just at my desk with my headphones and doing my work, and I love my work, but I was like instantly feeling the depletion happening. So then I was like talking to friends that also work in offices, and they were like, oh no, you get a whole hour. You need to leave for your lunch. You need to just leave that office and like go do something. So I'm constantly going to lunch with friends, or I'll go to, there's a zoo really close to where I work. So I'll go to the zoo,
That's cool.
or like I just learned that I need to get out of that office and like socialize or just be near people so that I
Yeah.
can like feel better about the day. Yeah, exactly. And it ends up working out perfectly because Cruz's version of like hanging out with somebody is playing video games with them online, or going to Mikey's for a couple hours like once a month, and he's the happiest clam in the world, or going to like a movie with somebody. But for me, I need to like go out. Like I'm constantly feeling guilty or feeling like a bad mom because I go out with friends. But then if I don't go out with friends, I'm like a horrible mom anyways because I'm depressed and mad.
Yeah.
And that's actually because you asked me before we recorded, that's why I like doing this so much, because I feel like I'm getting my batteries recharged talking to all these people and getting to
Yeah.
ask all these questions. But I'm not actually leaving my home, and I'm only in my garage for like 2 hours instead of going out and not seeing my kids at all that day because I went to work and then went for drinks after. And then they're in bed by the time I get home. And so yeah, it ends up working out. I get to put we're recording this early, but usually I like put the baby to bed, or I say goodnight at like 6:30 because she goes to bed at 7, and I'll come out here and record, and I'll go back in, and then I get like a good hour with just Jared, and then he goes to bed, and then I get just Chris time. So it's
That's
worked
nice.
out a lot. Yeah, it helps my extrovertedness and it helps my mom guilt. So
Yeah.
I've been liking it. But yeah, I guess we'll end it there. I think that's a good stopping point. So
Yeah.
I'll share I'll share the Chasing Windmills info in the description,
Mhm.
right? And then yeah. Oh, I was going to ask you before we leave. So you're starting your second journey with surrogacy. Do you
Yeah.
have a match? Do you have like an embryo implant date? Is any of that stuff happening?
I officially got matched about 2 weeks ago. So this time around, I'm going to help a couple in the US. So it'll be a different
Cool.
experience. They'll be a little more local. They're not from California, but I can just imagine getting flights to fly in maybe for an appointment here and there being easier than if you're out of the country.
For sure.
So yeah, so I've been officially matched. I have to go, I have a doctor's appointment this coming week to do like the annual pap smear and get medical clearance, which they're pretty sure I'll have. The beginning process this time around was a lot faster because having to get medical records, I mean, I just gave birth, so
Yeah.
everything's recent.
Yeah.
But I get medically cleared, and then depending on, so after you give birth to a baby, you have to wait your 6 week postpartum to be able to sign up again. So literally as I could, I signed up again. But if I remember correctly, you have to wait to your 6 months postpartum to do an embryo transfer. Which I think for me, what does that put me in, like March or April, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
October, November, December, January, February, March. Yeah, like March.
Yeah. So somewhere around that point is when I have the green light to do a transfer. But again, it'll depend on the fertility clinic. We have to start from the process of regulating the period, a whole month of medication and injections, and then we'll have a transfer date. So
Cool.
transfer.
If any listeners want to be a surrogate or considering surrogacy, is there like anything you want to tell them, announce to them, advise them?
I think my big thing is, if you, out of this whole podcast, off of everything I've said, if all you heard was the money portion, don't do it. Like,
yes, I love that.
yeah, and that's not just, I mean, don't get me wrong, like we, like our agency in particular, like we could use surrogates, but I just feel like if you're going in it solely and specifically for the money, you possibly will have a harder time like disconnecting yourself from having emotions with that surro baby. I don't know. And just for me in general, I don't know if it's the person I am, but just the idea of doing it just solely for the money, like, makes me feel gross. Like,
Yeah, I feel like this isn't something that you should like capitalize on. And
yeah,
it shouldn't be seen as like, I have this amazing good that you really need, pay me for it. Like it just seems so weird. Yeah, I feel like it should be more of like a service. And I know I learned I watched a documentary on Netflix, I think, about babies, and in Canada it's actually illegal to pay somebody to be a surrogate.
yeah.
So they have like a national list that you sign up for if you want to be a surrogate, and like you have to go through all those same clearances, but through like the country or the state or however they divide that up. And you literally can't get paid for it. And most of them are open because you'll stay there and you'll a lot of times it'll be you helping the parents transition because you have kids yourself and you've done surrogacy before. So you're like, okay, this is normal. And now you're kind of like this nanny for a while and you become a part of the family. And you like, because there's parents there's women or mothers, however you want to list them, that can actually begin lactation without ever carrying a child. So then you can help them breastfeed and teach them how to breastfeed. You can teach them how often to change diapers or what's not normal. And it's very interesting that they do it that way, where it's like a true, but it does make it hard to get a surrogate in that country because there's so few people that are willing to do it with no compensation at all whatsoever.
Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong, the compensation's nice, but I definitely think this would be something I'd want to do, money or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just put on my heart so much, and getting to know like my last intended father, and then I know it'll happen again with these new parents, that like getting to know them, knowing their story, like, I've said it on like our surrogacy like group meetings that we have. Like, I had asked one time, like, how many intended parents do we have waiting right now? And we had about like 14 or 15 intended parents on a waiting list. And like, I wanted to cry because I'm like, I just
Yeah.
want all. Like, if I
Yeah.
could physically not let me, but if I could.
That is crazy. Yeah, it's really sad to think. Yeah, especially, and me and Chris have talked about this too, where it's um, like his sister, she just had kids and she didn't even like, she wasn't a good person. And I'll just end it there because like she's just not a good person. So she couldn't be a good mom. And it's like, somehow that person gets all those kids that they didn't even really want or don't take care of. And then now you're telling us that there's like 15 people in line that are desperately wishing for children and they can't get them and they have to wait. Yeah, it's sad for sure. But thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm sorry it ran over. I could just ask questions about this stuff like all day long. So
You're good. You can ask me the questions, I'll answer you.
So yeah, if you listen to this and you have questions for Melisah, you can let me know and I'll direct them to her. Maybe we'll do a part 2 after your second journey.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you. I'll stop the recording, but the Zoom won't end right away. But yeah. Okay, bye.